Everyone, the Building, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee is here Wednesday, November 15th, 2023 at 4:01. Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Chairwoman Patty Smith.
Here.
Vice Chair Shweta Bade.
Here.
Alderman Carl Franco.
Here.
Alderman Mike Seville.
Here.
Alderman Bill Donnell.
Here.
5 present.
Thank you. First item to go over is the approval of the minutes from the Building, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee from October 11th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's motioned by Alderwoman Bade, second by Alderman Franco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any public comment, Clerk?
No, we do not.
Thank you so much. The first and only item on the agenda today is 230910, a resolution adopting the 2023 edition of the Fox Walk Overlay District Design Guidelines Intent, Rules, and Regulations as an apex of Chapter 49 of the Code of Ordinance, City of Aurora, being the zoning. And we have a presentation today.
Yes, good afternoon. We have our consultant who is with us remotely, who will be giving a presentation on the guidelines update. So let me try to make sure we bring him up and see if this works. All right, Todd, we should be ready if you want to begin.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jill. Thank you all for your time today to learn about the draft changes to the Fox Walk Overlay District Design Guidelines. My name is Todd Benadalak. I am the city's urban planning consultant for this project. I have actually worked on multiple projects here in Aurora since 2002, so about 21 plus years working in Aurora, including 7 neighborhood plans through the Aurora Neighborhood Planning Initiative. Also, a fun fact, I also graduated from high school here in Aurora in the mid-90s. Before we start, I do want to thank city planning staff, including Jill Morgan, Tracy Vasic, Ed Sieben, John Curley, and the rest of their staff who worked tirelessly with me to put the draft design guidelines update together. We also want to thank the Fox Walk Design Review Committee, the DRC, for their work to review and provide feedback on the draft changes. So thank you to DRC Chair Charlie Zine, Brian Failing, Fernando Castrojon, Clara Diaz, Seth Hoffman, and Jeff Palmquist.
Can I ask again who he's with? I couldn't hear that initially.
Yeah, we need to get the volume thing under control a little bit. It's too low now, and then it went too high. So if you guys in the next room can hear me, can you take care of this?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
And, sir, could you, thank you for being with us today. Could you please do us a favor and just give us your name and identify yourself one more time before?
Sure. My name is Todd Benadalak. I am the urban planning consultant working with the city. I am an independent contractor, and I've been planning in the Chicago region for about 23 years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Volume's good.
Okay, great.
I'd rather have it too loud.
I'll speak closer to my computer, so that'll be hopefully help. Well, thanks again for your time. To start out, it is important to understand what exactly is the Fox Walk Overlay District. It is one of the city's historic overlay districts, which was passed by City Council in 1993. The Fox Walk Overlay District promotes and guides redevelopment of buildings and vacant lots in downtown Aurora, while also making sure to protect its character as a historic downtown. In accordance with the Aurora zoning ordinance, each of the city's overlay districts is required to have design guidelines. The Fox Walk is, I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Okay. The Fox Walk design guidelines represent appropriate design standards that fit the context, character, and intended physical appearance of the historic downtown. It is important to note that the design guidelines are not to be confused with the city's comprehensive plan, downtown master plan, or riverfront plan, which already exist and help to inform the draft changes to these guidelines. Rather, the design guidelines support recommendations from these existing plans. The purpose of this process is to update the design guidelines for the Fox Walk District. Approved in 1993 and last updated in 2008, the design guidelines resulted from 30 plus years of plans, reports, and regulations to guide the design and redevelopment of downtown Aurora. Key outcomes from this include the creation of the district, Foxwalk district, which covers 2 zoning districts, the downtown core and the downtown fringe. The design guidelines also cover restoration of existing structures as well as guidelines for new sites and buildings, and also specifications for the Foxwalk or Riverwalk along the riverfront. This 2023 update of design guidelines will provide clarity on the city's design expectations for the Foxwalk, respond to significant changes to certain sites and roadways, including the Broadway streetscape improvements and renovations to the New York Street Bridge. It will also be more equitable to people of all abilities and transportation choice, including ADA accessibility and additional standards promoting walkability and bikeability. Provide guidelines that respond to relevant and emerging topics in urban planning and design, and also support redevelopment efforts in downtown Aurora, including greater access and views to the river, and guidelines that will have relevance to the eventual reuse of the casino site. This slide shows the extensive level of comments posted on the web-based comment map. So the image on your top right was a web-based engagement tool where community members could post comments. Items in blue were posted directly to the website, and then the image on the bottom left is actually from a public open house that was held earlier in the spring, where we got about 60 plus community members to come out and provide their comments. And their comments were put on kind of a visual map that you'll see on that image on the bottom left, but we also translated those to the online map, and those comments are the ones in dark pink. Yeah, so there was a high level of energy, and people shared their thoughts and ideas for the Foxwalk through this process. So some general items to cover first, just the document structure of the Foxwalk design guidelines. This provides a general sense of the different chapters that are in the document. So the bulk of the presentation today will provide a high-level overview of each section, including some of the key draft changes to each section of the design guidelines. The first section is section 1. This section provides an overview of the Foxwalk Overlay District, including the topics covered listed below. That includes resolutions and ordinances, maps. The legal description is being updated. I'll actually cover that in a second. The underlying zoning, definitions, history and character of the district, purpose and goals, a review of current and past plans, especially any that have been added since 2008, which was the last time the guidelines were updated, and a land use survey as well. So this is this slide shows an example of that land use survey. So the original document included a map of the Foxwalk dividing the area into 30 individual blocks with site information from a land use survey conducted during that 2008 update. For this 2023 update, we actually updated the site information for each of these 30 blocks to reflect any changes that have occurred over the past 15 plus years. Site information included general location, existing uses, significant or contributing structures of historic value, and potential development opportunities if applicable. Existing uses and potential development opportunities have changed for various blocks. So you actually see on the map on this page, 2 of them are marked in red. I just wanted to note 2 particular changes. Block 1 at the far northwest corner, that's the block that includes West Suburban Bank and is located north of New York Street between Lake and River Streets. After discussion with city staff and also with the DRC, we decided to remove this block from the Foxwalk district. So instead of 30, it'll be 29 blocks. And the reason for that was that the current uses on the site are more consistent with more modern development as opposed to the more historic value and historic character of the Foxwalk district. So we thought it would be more consistent with development that's further north along the riverfront. And then block 3, that's the one in the middle, kind of middle center, is this is the casino site. So we updated this to reflect plans to relocate the casino outside the downtown area and consider future reuse potential for this particular site. This includes opportunities to accommodate greater access and views of the river and potential mixed-use redevelopment. Next section is section 2. This section focuses on design guidelines for the maintenance and alterations of existing structures. This is of particular importance to support a distinct, cohesive image and character for the historic Foxwalk Overlay District. Some different topics covered in this chapter or in this section include exterior renovations, ground floor uses, building materials, maintenance of exteriors, and so on. Some specific additions or changes to this chapter or section 2 included providing flexibility for contemporary alternate materials that replicate historic materials. We updated standards regarding doors and windows, and then we added various standards for the different elements listed below, including blank facades, major alterations, trash enclosures, mechanical equipment, HVAC and utilities, how to maintain exteriors, winter vestibules and enclosures. And the bottom two are two new sections that we added, outdoor dining and rooftop decks. Another section that we added was related to decorative garages and patio doors. This is actually a new section because it is decorative garages are becoming more popular for restaurants and businesses in downtown areas and urban areas. So some of the standards that we covered, some of the new standards that we added to cover decorative garages include where to locate them, whether on the side or rear of the building, the style of the garage door, branding and signage, access to sidewalks and ADA accessibility, and also noise control, especially since a lot of the garage doors have glass instead of solid materials. So noise was generally a consideration that we wanted to provide standards for. In addition, we also covered lighting. While the 2008 version of the design guidelines had limited guidelines regarding lighting, we expanded the set of design guidelines as listed on this slide. Some of the things that we covered included gaining a certificate of appropriateness or a COA, what to do with original light fixtures, how to handle security lights, floodlights and footlights, spotlighting on blank facades, and downward spotlighting on the sidewalk. So the image you see on the far right, on the kind of the inset image, that is an example of downward spotlighting. This was something that was explored by the city's engineering consultant, H.R. Green, as part of the Broadway Streetscape project. A lot of this is still conceptual, but we did want to add this image because of we added the standards about downward spotlighting, and we wanted just to provide an image so you knew what that looked like. As I mentioned earlier, we added a new section on outdoor dining, which has been around for a while, but the way we regulate them has changed over time, including in recent years how we have learned lessons from the pandemic and the general encouragement of outdoor activities in the public right-of-way. Some of the standards that we added included allowance of patios, sidewalks, and parklets, how to regulate furniture like tables, chairs, and benches, fencing, heat lamps and fire pits, greenery and eco-friendly materials, and standards for shade. So shade, as you can see in the image here on this slide, umbrellas are the most common way to have shade for outdoor dining, but there are other ways to do that. So we added standards for things like pergolas and shade sails, which are emerging trends in terms of how to provide shade in these types of areas. The next section is section 3. This section focuses on guidelines and regulations for new construction and any additions to existing structures. Some of the topics covered here, listed here on the slide, is about building facade design, buildings facing the street or the river, service areas and loading docks, things like building heights, roof design, building materials, lighting, and again, outdoor dining. Those are two carryovers from section 2. Lighting and outdoor dining, and the last one is sustainability. We have a slide on that in a second. Some of the specific additions or changes to section 3 included requiring DRC approval for all new construction. We added new language about how new construction on larger vacant lots that are not adjacent to historic buildings have the opportunity to create new landmarks in the Foxwalk area and be designed more modern while still respecting the character of the downtown area, or the historic character of the downtown area. As I mentioned before, the lighting and outdoor dining guidelines from section 2 carry over to Section 3. And we also added some additional standards for roof gardens, large glass windows, and appropriate building materials. So as mentioned before, section we added sustainability. Some of the topics covered here relate to air sealing and ventilation of buildings, window energy efficiency, alternative energy sources such as wind, solar, and electric vehicles, and vegetative roof systems, or more commonly known as roof gardens. The new sustainability design guidelines are intended to support Aurora's legacy of being green and capitalizing on steps the city has taken to advance sustainability design and development. On the bottom, the bullet point list here just shows the various past and current sustainability initiatives that the city has done over the past several years. They include sustainability plans. There was Greentown, which the city hosted several years ago, and a lot of things came out of Greentown. Was updating the zoning code and so on, rain barrel and rain garden programs, and then some newer initiatives include electric vehicle charging stations and the ongoing infrastructure implementation project, which would improve water quality in the Fox River. Section 4 is related to signage. The topics covered here are general provisions about signage. We updated the list of prohibited signage in the downtown area. We also covered historic lighting, sign lighting, or non-conforming signage, and off-premise signs as well. One particular topic that we did cover is updating guidelines was related to fascia and wall signs. As a quick definition, a fascia sign is a sign placed on a signboard or horizontal band between a storefront on the ground floor and the second floor of the building. Some of the updated guidelines relate to allowing increased sign size, allowing such signs on a primary facade or over a primary entrance if the entrance faces the rear or an alley. But we also prohibited various fascia and wall signs. Some of those include cabinet signs, fabric signs, banners, temporary signs that are made to look permanent, vinyl stickers, plastic, and plastic core signs. So the two images that you see at the bottom of the slide, the photo on the left is an example of a fascia sign that conforms to the previous guidelines and looks too small for the wall. But the photo on the right is an example of a fascia sign that is that serves as an example of how the updated guidelines enable the fascia sign to fit the space better. So it looks larger, but we updated the way how we calculated sign size, and the way it's calculated counts for the overall wall size, and it just fits better on the image on the right. We also added new design guidelines for digital message boards. These were previously prohibited, but they are now allowed in the Fox Walk district. In particular, some of the topics covered here was that all digital message boards require DRC approval. And one of the reasons why they were added back, why we added standards for digital message boards was to help modernize and enhance attraction of the downtown. But we also wanted to limited where they were possible, so that there wasn't a proliferation of such signage in the Fox Walk. So some of the permitted areas that they're allowed are in, for live entertainment venues, parking garages, and city facilities. They're also only allowed on non-contributing or non-primary facades of historic buildings. And that's just to avoid impacts on historic structures and historic properties in the district. Section 5 is related to potential alterations or improvements to a property site and setting that could impact the appearance and character of the Fox Walk district. This is mostly a new section building upon best practices from other historic districts in the Fox Valley area and across Illinois. Some of the topics covered in this section include fences and walls, fire escapes, parking, landscaping, and a new section related to barrier-free accessibility or ADA access. Some specific additions to this chapter relate to defining acceptable and prohibited materials to construct fences or walls, We clarified what's acceptable as where to site fire escapes on a building, updated guidelines for on-street and off-street parking, but we also added parking guidelines for bike parking as well. And as I mentioned earlier, landscaping, there are standards for landscaping and barrier-free accessibility as well. So section 6, these are guidelines related to demolition. We just wanted to cover different considerations and procedures of how to handle demolition in the Fox Walk district. Some of the topics covered here was that demolition is may be considered acceptable if 3 certain points. If 75% or more of the exterior materials or structural elements are substantially deteriorated. 2, the structure does not contribute to the historic or architectural character of the district. Or 3, the applicant demonstrates that all other alternatives were considered before demolition. In all cases, demolition requires a Fox Walk Certificate of Appropriateness, or COA, and must be approved by the DRC. Section 7, this relates to guidelines for elements in the public right-of-way, including the sidewalk, the river, and the railroad. Some of the topics covered here relate to street furniture and other amenities, signage, sidewalks and paving, bridge maintenance and restoration, particularly related to the New York Street Bridge, views and access to the riverfront, and the viaduct under the BNSF railway. Two of the more specific additions or changes to Section 7, including guidelines for paving materials and the sidewalk, and as mentioned before, bridge maintenance and restoration. One of the key things that we added was new design guidelines about visual and physical connectivity to the riverfront. In particular, we provided standards related to access to and views of the riverfront, make sure that access was available to people of all ages and abilities, support the expansion of the pathway system, especially the Fox River Trail, public spaces along the riverfront, cohesive riverfront design theme, and also flood resilience and river flow, which relates back to the sustainability standards that were mentioned prior. Section 8 was mostly administrative provisions. Some of the things covered here was related to the role of the DRC and also the Certificate of Appropriateness, or the COA. Some specific additions included clarified the duties of the DRC. We updated the procedures to approve or deny a COA. We also updated procedures relating to preliminary and final review of applications for development. And also, in 2016, the city had standards for murals. We just added those existing standards for murals and added that to the design guidelines here. And the last section for the updated document relates to accomplishments. These are especially accomplishments that have been done since the 2008 update to the design guidelines. A lot of these relate to the Riverwalk, public amenities, and policies and programs. In particular, some of the more specific accomplishments since 2008 relate to public art and murals, some new pocket parks, especially the renovations to the Water Street Mall, conversion of multiple one-way streets to two-way streets, and also the creation of a special service area, or an SSA. That's all that we have. So thank you for your time. Definitely open to questions or comments.
Anyone have questions? Alderman Denell.
Thank you, Ms. Chairman. I have a 5 o'clock meeting, so hopefully we won't be in conflict here. But I do have a few questions on specifically on page 49 of the redlined version. We've struck out Fox Walk and put in River Walk. Are you making a distinction between the two?
In some cases, I believe I think we wanted to clarify the difference because there's certain times when it's actually called the Fox Walk, and sometimes it's called the River Walk in general terms. But I will mark that. You said page 49.
Page 49, there's several references to, well, there's several strikeouts on Fox Walk. And it kind of looked like maybe you were saying Riverwalk was right adjacent to the river. And I was just trying to see if that was a, if it was clear delineation.
Yeah, I think we're trying to clarify that they used to call it Fox Walk / River Walk, and no, we'll just call it River Walk. So if we're talking about the actual river walk, the path along the river, we're going to call it River Walk.
Right, it's to avoid, I think, avoid confusion, because the overlay district is the Fox Walk, but the actual walkway along the river, we're, I think, trying to call it the River Walks to make that distinction, just to clarify. It's very confusing to the public when you say that.
Okay. If I could just, I got a couple more.
If I could add to
Go
the
ahead.
discussion. When this was first began, and we adopted the guidelines in '93, during that process, we decided to name the district the Fox Walk, but also the name of the Riverwalk is Fox Walk. It's Riverwalk, but the name of it happens to be Fox Walk. So that's why you see these instances of referrals of one or the other. So, it's still a Riverwalk, whatever you call it. You call it, Jones Boulevard, but it's still a Riverwalk, So just wanted to clarify that for you.
Continue.
Okay, thank you. I know that we banned the LED lights. I think we banned LED lights in the community. I don't know if there's any reference to down, in the Fox Walk, but I certainly think in the historic portion of our town, we really don't want those LED lights that go around the windows. So I don't know if we've addressed that or not, but that was one other concern. We talked a little bit about materials, and we talked about bricks versus Unistone versus a stamped concrete or stamped asphalt. And I think our standard is looking for the Unistone, which I think is going to hold up probably better than some of the other ones. But yeah, I want to make sure that we have, if it's not the exact material, that it represents the material. And maybe like stamped asphalt, that the color wears off fairly quickly, maybe is not the best choice.
And just to clarify, Unilock.
Unilock?
Yeah, I think you said Unistone.
Unistone.
You mean Unilock, right?
Well, the Unilock product.
Correct, which is a concrete paver product versus a typical paver brick. So-
Right. And lastly, you have a detail on tree pits. It looks like a pretty good thing. Alex heads up our tree board. We've had considerable discussion on how big they should be. I don't know if we can make them as big as we really would like to make them, but we, make sure that those sizes are larger and give the tree a chance.
So we did have the opportunity to sit down with planning staff and discuss the tree pits and the different sizes. So that is something that we'll continue to work through as construction commences, but that was part of the discussion.
Good. But otherwise, it looks like we've put a lot of work and effort into this document.
Anyone else have any questions? Alderman Franco?
I don't know if this is the kind of question we ask here. When we talked about the lighting and stuff in different places, I don't know if we'll have a discussion later, but I know there's a lot of people that said we should probably have more lighting on the river, shining on the buildings by the river. I don't know if this is what we're talking about here today, or if it's just the nuts and bolts of that, but I know that was a concern for people, or desire, I should say, for people to have more lighting shining from the river and highlighting that. And I know we talked about the lights here, but I didn't know if that's really what we're talking about here today or not.
Are you talking about lighting onto the buildings from?
Onto the buildings
From the kind of
along the
river.
river, so it
Okay.
just kind of makes it enhances it a little bit. I know people have talked about that, but I didn't know if that was part of what this discussion was going to be, so I'm just throwing that out now.
The uplighting versus the downlighting?
Pardon?
The uplighting versus the downlighting, which is what they were showing.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's whatever a professional would think would be enhancing that area to make it, because we have a natural resource here. I think we'd like lit up, along the corridor there on the buildings or whatever the case may be. But I didn't know if that was, something we want to deal with today or not.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned in the guidelines about architectural accent lighting. So maybe we can even mention maybe something specifically about along the river.
Right.
Would be a good spot for that.
All right, that's all I have.
Anyone else?
Question.
Yes.
Under the advertising signs, I see with the message boards, I should say the digital ones, that has DRC approval. And do they have any guidelines to go by when they look at submittal as to what the look is supposed to be like.
And that's for the digital message boards? Is that what you said?
Yeah, you have the message, but then you have the outline of the actual physical structure itself, you know.
We did not really go anything beyond kind of size requirement as, it's, I think, trying to allow maybe a little more just case by case review of it by the DRC. So we didn't get real specific on trying to make them all adhere to a certain design.
Well, I don't think we want to see like polka dot or, checkerboard or something that's not in keeping with the overall design and look of the Fox Walk District. I think we want to keep it somewhat like we did for the that device out in front there. That kind of maintains over here. Yeah, the kiosk, yeah. That kind of and same with other kiosks, they maintain the overall theme of the Fox Walk District. So I would think we would want to do the same thing for this as well.
All right, Todd, maybe, Todd, we can look into adding some language about the design itself and being compatible.
Okay, great. And then the
For sure.
lighting, we talked a little bit about in our meeting that we had, the lighting as well. Have you given further thought about how we can make sure that the either staff or the DRC committee has input and approval of the types of lighting that goes on within the downtown in the public right-of-way, so to speak?
Or that you're talking about the temporary,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, I think that's maybe just more of an internal communication between different departments to make sure that everyone keeps the DRC and the FCOA aware, of what they're proposing.
Now, you don't think we need something mentioned in this document?
I think
We
she's
can
saying that this is
consider
more
that
internal.
maybe getting an FCOA for temporary holiday installments.
Sure, I think that'd be a good idea.
Yes.
I think our conversation during our meeting was this was more of an internal thing that wouldn't belong in this packet, but I don't know.
I think Jill's suggestion about having a COA would be a good idea.
Yeah, we can discuss that further, Alex, maybe to see how we want to handle that. Whether we want an official FCOA or if we can just have something internally communicated.
Great. Yeah, well, my concern is sometimes there's internal breakdown, like what's going on now. So if we have something specific in the guidelines, it won't break down.
Okay.
So, staff can talk to other staff and say, look, it's here in the guidelines, we have to follow it. So it'd make everybody's job a lot easier, I think.
And that pertains to city projects as well? I'm trying to understand what
absolutely.
it
It
is
was-
and the internal breakdown that you're referring to. So I think we will have to.
I think the breakdown is the city projects, right? There's nobody that we know of that's doing this privately. It's a city initiative that's going on, that's going beyond the guidelines.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that and see what we need to, what specifically we're looking at.
Great, thank you.
Alderwoman Bay?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Under Section 3, additions and new construction, if you could go over ongoing green infrastructure implementation project, improve water quality in Fox River. Are we, what are we doing?
I'm sorry, do you just want us to give a little more details what we mean by that?
Are there any
Is this
new
the-
additions this time, or we're just continuing?
Specific recommendations. Todd, can you kind of go back to that slide
Page 21.
21? It's, right there.
The last point.
It's under sustainability. Is that the section it's under?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did I pass it? Oops.
Yep. The last one.
About the improving water quality at the last bullet point on this list.
Yeah, I think that would include like, the city has worked with Public Works on rain gardens downtown on some of the intersections. I believe that's what that was.
Yeah, and I
envisioning,
think it was
correct?
also, we had some public comment about just and this a little bit goes maybe beyond the Fox Walk, but just some public comment about just cleaning up the river itself as well, just trying to make sure everything's ecologically friendly and just wanted, I think we were just trying to make sure we reference that because we did get some comments from the public that we do want to support that and support cleaning up the river and keeping everything clean and ecological and using the right type of plantings along the river, stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
Question. I was going to piggyback on that. So when we talk about the clean river, it's brown, not bad. It's just brown from the silt. So I know we're talking about dam removals, and that's kind of what stirs the water up sometimes. Does that kind of go into all this because I know, and I don't want to compare us to other cities, but I know when you go up north and you get in St. Charles area, their water is less brown, but still the Fox River. So I'm trying to figure out how we can get it more blue, less brown, more blue. And I didn't know if that would go into what we're talking about here or not.
I think that, I believe that has to do with the dam. I know people have mentioned if the dams were removed, the water would not look as brown. So I think that's a little beyond this scope.
Oh, it is.
But I think some of the issue is not just the brownness. People were talking about just, there was stuff in the river, just things, trash and just kind of more like keeping trash and big pieces of lumber and trees, kind of cleaning it up, I think was more of the general reference.
What if that said water quality and appearance? Because when I read water quality, I read that you're going to be really doing something directly to the water, where it sounds like the definition you just gave is cleaning up around it to make it look better. So you're not really doing anything to the actual quality of the water, but you're giving the appearance, making it look nicer around it. Am I wrong with that?
No, I think that, Todd, I think you would agree with, is that kind of fair assessment? Do we maybe just need to change our language with that?
Yeah, and for sure, water quality and appearance. I mean, some of the standards that we do include relate to using native plantings, sustainable paver, or permeable pavers. Those two particular standards in particular can help with both improving water quality and the appearance of water, just so that impurities do not make it into the river. But yeah, in terms of language, updating that particular text, yeah, we can do that.
If I could add to that, and I'm fairly familiar with this because I was president of the Ecosystem Partnership for a couple of times. The city supports the Fox River Ecosystem Partnership, which looks at water quality in the river, and they also support other agencies that look at that and monetarily support that. So I don't know what we can say that. We work through these other agencies specifically to look for water quality. And dam removal is part of it. Mostly it's silt and algae that causes the problem when you have an impoundment, but you remember we take a third of our water out of the river as well. So it's the quality, I hear what you're saying, but I think it gets stirred up. The big dams downtown stir it up, which make it a little muddy through the downtown. But yeah.
So, as we get ready to finish up here, just want to thank Jill and Tracy for spending the time with each of us to go through all of this at a very in-depth, step-by-step process, which, I think we were given 30 minutes, and we ended up being in my group an hour and a half. So even with that meeting, we still have, had 15 minutes of conversation. So with what you guys did, it was so very helpful, I believe, to us to have had that ahead of time. So I truly appreciate that. And then, one of the things that I hear as I listen to this presentation is the uniformity in our city. And I think that this is something that's going to really help the uniformity of our area there, with the lighting, the signage, the paving materials, and hopefully make, just as time goes on, it all will kind of just go together instead of hodgepodgey like we kind of have in certain areas now. But then there is one area that I would like to talk about a little bit, is these parklets, because I think these parklets are wonderful, and I know I brought this up in our meeting. I think that they're great, and I hope we continue to utilize them and have them. But I really think that we need to make sure that we have some kind of guidelines for their appearances. The park should be able to be surrounded by big unattractive orange barrels. Obviously, we want, pedestrians sitting there to be safe, but we also want the appearance of the parking lot to be nice as well. So we need to put some kind of guidelines on those parklets.
Yes, and I believe I added some language saying that they're like no ropes, no chains, that the barrier should be like decorative planters, not just wood, not barrels, not cones. So I did try to add some language to
Thank you.
make it a little nicer.
And if I could just add, I think there have been some safety precautions taken that weren't necessarily the most attractive, and that's definitely
Sure.
something we're continuing to work through, and that's always subject to budgetary constraints, but we remain committed, completely agree. We want everything to look uniform and nice instead of a
Right.
giant orange, yes.
Right,
So-
so you got orange barrels all around, and again, it
Yes.
feels good because you're protected and you want that, but
Yes.
we need to somehow do the same thing in another way.
Yes, and if you look around the downtown, some updates and upgrades have been made. Specifically, if you drive by River Edge Park, the council approved those. So
Yeah,
those are things that
absolutely.
we
That's what I
are,
was referring to, yes. that
yes,
was
we're
so nice.
uniformly trying to update our collection, I guess we'll say.
Yes,
So-
yeah, we do have a couple restaurants that could use a little help in that area. Anyone have
I have
more?
one more thought, and this may not be the place for it, but it's something I've thought about in the past. We do a pretty good job with our signage in downtown, trying to locate, our businesses and our parking lots. And especially now that Broadway's under construction, parking has become a little bit more of a priority. I don't know if we've ever thought about, or anybody else feels the same way, but we A, B, C, D parking lot. My suggestion, could we put names on these parking lots so people could kind of identify, I want the New York Street lot, or I want the fire station lot, put a name on them so people could, if I'm trying to direct people where to park, it might be easier if they had a name that would kind of anchor them to the geographic area that they are.
Sure. So the city council will very soon be seeing I believe, a proposal for a parking study that would update the signage, create new signage packages in compliance with Jill's efforts here. So that is something that you'll be seeing very soon because we do need to update what we have and how we advertise it.
Okay, thank you.
Do we, have a motion for this item?
Second?
Motion made by Alderwoman Bade, second by Alderman Donnell. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Anything further to come before the BZ&E committee today?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. We've had a motion by Alderman Franco to adjourn, second by Alderwoman Bade. All in favor?
Aye.